And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're here joining us for another week of the PM Show. I am one half of your dynamic hosting duo, Mandy Parsons. With me, I have the excellent John Moreland. Hello, John Moreland.
The other half.
The other half, yes. And
the other half.
So glad to be back here on another week. And we have good, exciting news for everybody. If you missed the show on Wednesdays, you can now hear us from 4 to 6 p.m. on the Voluntary Virtues Network, where our show will be syndicated from Wednesday nights on Thursdays. And I know that John is so excited about this.
Yes, we can trash the government, and then that will be repeated the next day. What could be better?
I love it. I love it. Now, I want to tell you something. My latest listening genre lately has been country music, and I think it's because a lot of country. No, just listen. I think that a lot of country these days sounds like pop, and that is why I'm so interested in it. But let me share something with you that's very cool, which even you will like. There is a band in the world of country music called Love and Theft. Interesting name, I know. I got to see an interview with these guys from a radio station out in Houston. And the lady asked the two guys, it's two guys in the band. She asked the first guy, "Oh, are you an Obama supporter?" And the first guy smart aleckly said, "Who's Obama? Who's that?" And the second guy, straightforward answer, said, "Well, I can't answer that because I'm on camera, but let's just say, take a look at my bracelet. Take a look at this. Ron Paul for life."
Oh, that's cool.
Wasn't it cool?
I like those guys already.
Exactly. I know you're not a country fan, but I thought you'd like that story because I did a fist pump in the air when I heard that. So we have people in the world who are representing us. I mean, I know that's not the first libertarian to support us and support our movement, but I thought it was really cool that there's a celebrity who's really keeping the movement alive. So I was really excited to hear that. So last week I had to take a hiatus. John took a hiatus. We did a rebroadcast, so we've got a lot of things to talk about tonight. John, what has been going on in your life, friend?
Well, as you know, yesterday was primary day in South Carolina. And I'm sad to say, but old Lindsey Graham won our primary in South Carolina. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with Lindsey Graham. But he got 59%, which I was actually surprised he got that much. I mean, I wasn't really that surprised that he won the primary. I thought he might go into a runoff. But it's interesting because you've got and now you got to remember, this is the Republicans. This is their base. So it's not like it was a general election. You got 40% of the Republicans who don't want this guy anymore. So I think that's encouraging. I'm trying to find something encouraging about what happened yesterday. Now I did like Lee Bright. I think Lee got about 13%. I did not vote. I will say that honestly, because I don't vote anymore because it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Voting is
right.
Well, I mean my opinion is. Well, all you're doing is you're getting to pick who rules over you. The option to not be ruled over is not on the ballot. Like, you don't get that choice. All you get is the choice of who gets to be your ruler. And I don't like that system, so I opt out. So, I mean, I take a very much an anarchist viewpoint when it comes to voting.
Well, I mean, considering the fact that voting used to be an exciting thing because you were actually choosing a representative to speak on your behalf, in Washington, D.C., in the government. That is not the case anymore, I'll tell you. And the primaries for South Carolina are a big deal. Now, you have since moved to North Carolina, right?
Very, very, very recently.
Right. So,
like within the last 30 days. So, I mean, technically, I probably could have still voted, but I didn't vote.
Well, it's like you said, it's no different. I think I came to the realization yesterday that just as long as their person wins, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter about values. It doesn't matter about what they stand for. Just as long as the Republicans get in, they're so-called Republican, and the Democrats get in, they're so-called Democrat, then, oh, hey, we won. That's all that matters. I don't care what they stand for. I don't care what they're representing us for. We win because we got our person in. That's all that matters.
Yeah, and typically it's an establishment person. I mean, on a rare occasion you do get someone like Ron Paul, but that's an anomaly. Just like, and I don't know if we're going to talk about this later, but the guy who beat Eric Cantor, I don't even know his name. And I don't know a whole lot about the guy, but
Dave Bratt. Dave Bratt. He is making waves. He's making serious waves. So
now, I don't know much about him. He's supposed to be a Tea Party darling. Is he? Does he lean towards liberty movement, or do you know that much about him? I don't, honestly. I don't know that I care anymore.
I read a brief article that we can go over together on the show. I don't know much about him. I just know that everybody's up in arms. But you see, he's also the primary candidate. So that means there's still another round of voting to go. And yes, it's important that he beat Eric Cantor. But the important thing really is we will see if he can stand up to his opponent in the November elections. That's the biggest thing right now. I know the man is from Virginia. A district in Virginia, which, as we know, is a blue state. They got a new governor in the last election. So
yeah, Terry McAuliffe. Can you believe that? That blew my mind. I couldn't believe Virginia voted in Terry McAuliffe.
Well, we have many more problems. I'm not surprised. Because he's a Democrat and they're so close to D.C. I'm really not surprised about that.
Hey, Nina's from Virginia now.
I used to live in Virginia.
It's funny because when you go to Virginia, it still kind of feels Southern, but like they're not Northerners, but they're not yet Southerners either. They're kind of like in between.
I feel the same way about Maryland.
Virginia?
Well, I used to live in Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
I feel the same way about Maryland. I mean, Maryland is technically a Southern state because it's south of the Mason-Dixon line, but it is still more Northern than Southern.
Well, there's a big secession movement in Maryland, and what's really interesting is you've got about half, I think it's the western part of the state, that's extremely conservative, but it's overshadowed by the leftists in the rest of the state, and so it usually goes Democrat. So Maryland's a really interesting case. And, I mean, I was shocked. This was maybe 6 months ago. I found out there was a secession movement in Maryland. I was like, Maryland? What? And my ex-wife is from Maryland, so nothing good can come from Maryland. No, I'm kidding.
Ouch. Except people from who live there who go to a different state. Yeah, we'll just roll with that. I do want to remind everybody that we do have a chat room. If you go to freedomizerradio.com, there is a little tab off to the side that says chat room. Feel free to create an identity and come join us in the chat room. And always, your calls are
and for all you
welcome.
perverts, it's not that kind of chat room for the perverts out there. Hey, let's keep it clean, people. I remember when the internet first. I remember when I went to my buddy's house and it was like dial-up internet for the first time, and there was all these chat rooms, and I was like, "Wow, this is kind of weird." Do you remember that? Do you remember like the first time you got on the internet?
Yeah, because we were AOL, baby, all the way.
Oh yeah, my buddy had AOL. His parents. Oh my God, his mom was so mad because we got on there for like 3 hours, and their bill was like $1,000 or something crazy. I don't remember back in the day when they charged like per minute or whatever. And we went in these chat rooms and we were talking politics with people from around the world, and we thought this was the coolest thing we've ever experienced in our lives. We were geeks back then, too.
Let's go back even further, though. Before AOL became big and on the scene, we had CompuServe. Do you remember CompuServe?
I vaguely remember CompuServe. I'm trying to remember who I had when I finally got dial-up internet. I remember I first started downloading music with dial-up internet. I'd go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and 2 songs had downloaded, and I was like, score! I got 2 new songs. And now
and
with
if it
high
takes
speed,
longer than 5 minutes now, we get irate and upset about it.
Oh, I can download using torrents on my cell phone. I've got a Galaxy. I've got an Android system. And I can download on torrents, and I can get an album in 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, not even that long, sometimes 2 minutes. But it depends on the file size. But it's so quick now. With my mobile phone, I can get it faster. It's crazy to think about. But I remember when we would get on the internet and we'd have to wait. And, remember the noise?
Boing, boing.
Yeah, there are kids that they're never going to know what that noise is. They're going to be like, what are you talking about?
Oh, just add that to albums and cassette tapes and VCRs and VHS tapes. Yeah, we'll just add it to the list.
Oh, I got a funny story about VHS tapes. My sister went to my parents' house. It's a clean story. It's about my nephews. So my sister goes to my parents' house, okay? And this is like a couple months ago. And my parents still have a bunch of VHS. You know, they're old school. They've got a DVD player, but good Lord, they've got so many VHS tapes. So anyways, the kids wanted to watch one of the old movies my parents have, like Old Yeller or something. It's on freaking videotape. So my sister gets it out, puts it in the VCR, and she turns it on, and of course it's at the end. The credits are rolling. She's like, "Oh, sorry, kids. It's at the end. Nobody rewound it last time. We're gonna have to rewind it." And they were like, "Well, just start it over, Mom." She's like, "No, we have to rewind it to make it go back." They're like, "Well, just hit play, Mom. Just start it over." Like, they did not understand the concept of rewinding a tape. They've never used tapes. They have DVDs, and their dad's got them. The new Amazon Prime, where it's like Netflix, and it's instant. And the boys, they know how to do it too. They pick up a remote and boom. There it is. It's instantaneous. They have no idea what it is to rewind a tape. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, they have no idea what the phrase means to please be kind and rewind.
Yeah, I remember when we were growing up, we actually bought. Do you remember when they sold rewinders separately that were much faster? So
no, I have no idea what that is.
Are you serious?
I don't even know those things existed.
Yeah, I remember I was in like high school, and they came out with this little box because my dad bought one. He had to have one. And there were two reasons to buy it. Number one was it saved the heads on your VCR, because when you push rewind on the VCR, the tape runs across the head, and that wears the head out faster, and that makes your VCR go bad faster. So anyways, that was one reason to do it. But the other reason was it was much, much faster. It was just a little box, and you would slide the VHS tape in, you'd push it down, and like within about a minute and a half, it was rewound.
Wow. And to think I missed out on this brilliant technology even in the 90s.
You missed out.
Wow.
You totally missed out on that.
Well, I do want to say hello to Liberty Phoenix, who's joined me in the chat room. Anybody, again, can go to freedomizerradio.com, click on the tab off to the right that says chat room, and can join us. But also, if you want to share your comments, your questions, you want to have a comment or 5 or 10, call in. The number is 347-324-3704. So that was 347-324-3704. We will welcome guest comments and calls and questions, and if you just want to shoot the breeze with us, please do. But we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, and I think we want to continue from a topic that we were covering a few weeks ago. I know one of the biggest subjects right now is the $15 an hour minimum wage that's taken off in Washington State, and you found another article similar to that one that links in. So why don't you tell us what you found?
Well, there was a story on CNN Money, and the title of the story is "Robots Will Replace Fast Food Workers." But basically, the gist of it is, a lot of these chains are going to go to basically iPads. It's going to all go to touchscreens. And they're just going to eliminate workers is what they're going to do. And this is what always happens. If you look at any industry, when they become more and more regulated, they have to pay higher and higher wages due to any of the requirements that are put on businesses. Say, for example, unemployment insurance. They have to pay part of Social Security. Any of those things go up. What happens is, these companies just invest in newer technology. They try to do more with less people. And this is what you're going to see with minimum wage. It's the same thing. Seattle, as we talked about before, just put through a $15 an hour minimum wage. But what I think really tells on Seattle, and what's really interesting about their situation is it's going to be implemented over a 7-year period. So they're going to phase it in. So they're obviously at least intelligent enough to know that if we implemented this all at one time, this would not be good, which I think kind of tells on them. They actually do somewhat understand this is going to have a negative impact. And the other thing is, and I'm not sure what the standard is, but there's a certain number of employees you have to have. So it's mainly going to affect the larger companies. So a lot of the companies, the $15 an hour minimum wage is not even going to affect them. So now they're all acting like this is some huge big deal. But this is it's going to cost jobs. They're going to end up installing 4 iPads and have one employee, and they're going to go from 4 employees down to 1. And that's just what's going to happen. And so you're going to have that one person is no doubt going to make more money, and they are going to be better off. But what about the 3 people that don't have jobs now? I mean, I don't know what they're going to do.
All I can say is that $15 an hour minimum wages, they got their $15 an hour minimum wages, and this is the repercussion of getting what you wanted. I mean, minimum wage was never started to be something to live off of anyway. It was just supposed to be a leg up, and it was started by Roosevelt during his New Deal, getting us out of the Great Depression. So it's stuck around. It's gradually increased, and this is what you get when you've got college grads who are earning $15 an hour and more, and you've got people who are making burgers who want to get paid $15 an hour. Well, sorry, people who are making burgers. This is what you get. You asked for it. Economically, this has nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats. This is everything to do with economics. I told somebody at the elementary school where I was working, he said, "Oh, that's right, you're a Republican." I said, this has nothing to do with being a Republican. Economically, you cannot pay $15 an hour without prices increasing on foods or goods or services, or without laying people off and making them lose their job. So either way, something's going to happen. And here we are. Here's the repercussion.
Right. You know, it's funny. It's like these people are under an illusion that if the government writes a law that gravity doesn't exist, we'll all automatically float away. But the government can't just write laws and bring things into reality that are against the laws of nature, same as they can't do it when they've tried to violate the laws of economics. These things do have consequences. And, you know, honestly, I would like to see a $15 minimum wage right now, immediately. No exemption for smaller businesses, and the $15 minimum wage doesn't get phased in over 7 years. I want it now. I want a great example that we can point to and say, here, you guys thought it was a brilliant idea? Now we have a beautiful example. But what they're going to do is they're going to phase in it over time. It's going to only affect a certain amount of workers, and we're not going to get a real – I don't think that like Seattle is going to be a real good example. There may be other places that become a shining example, but Seattle won't. And to me, it's interesting that, you know, and maybe, I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I mean, why would they wait 7 years? What's the deal with phasing in over 7 years?
Well, they did the same thing when they changed the national minimum wage from $5.25 an hour to $7.25 an hour, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't minimum wage $7.25 an hour now?
I don't know. Most people – see, that's the other thing. Most people don't even make minimum wage. It only affects very few workers. Most companies pay above minimum wage. I know a lot of restaurants, because I was in that business for a short time, they paid about $10 an hour, which was, you know, well above the minimum wage because they wanted to retain employees. So, and now they would pay minimum wage, of course, to waitresses and stuff like that because they got tips, etc. So, and two, I'm curious about that. What are they going to do about waitresses? Are they going to get $15 an hour?
Well, I can tell you this. I was reading another article that comes from a city right outside of Seattle where they have implemented the $15 an hour minimum wage. Employees who are earning those now, and we're talking people who work at hotels, we're talking about people who work in kitchens, we're talking about people who bus tables, wait on people, whatever. They said, because we now have a $15 an hour minimum wage, we no longer get free parking. We have to pay for the parking that was previously paid for us. We don't get 401ks. We don't get paid vacations. We don't get all the perks that we were getting before the $15 an hour. I think some of these people forget all the extra things that they get when they were earning a lesser minimum wage. So they're now upset because they're like, well, we didn't see this coming. And this is why. You want your $15 an hour, you get your $15 an hour. Don't go complaining when everything that you didn't have to pay for, you now have to. They're going to have to cut back somewhere. So you can either pay these extra things you weren't paying before with your $15 an hour and you can keep your job, or you can quit and find somewhere else and end up still paying the same amount if you're able to find a new job.
No, I think you're absolutely right. People don't understand that it's all human action. You know, when they pass these rules and regulations, business owners aren't going to just sit there and say, okay, fine, we'll pay $15 an hour now, without making some other changes. There's going to be trade-offs. But, you know, one thing that we haven't talked about yet, and I feel like maybe we should have talked about this first, is the moral aspect. What right does the government have to force an individual that's a business owner to pay X amount in wages? Because at the end of the day, the only way in which you can support a minimum wage is if you support coercion and violence. If you support the government coercing people to do X, Y, or Z, then you support a system of violence and coercion. And that's just the way it is. There's no way out of that. But if you tell people, and I've said this to people before, they'll deny it. Oh, no, I'm against violence. I'm against it. Well, then why are you for the government forcing people to do things that are against their will?
I am having a conversation, not right at this moment, but I started with an 18-year-old last night. She just graduated from high school. I'm talking like just a few weeks ago, most recently. And she's like, I don't know what I believe yet. And I'm still young. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to believe. And I was like, you're supposed to believe whatever you want to believe. That is the beauty of being in the position you are now. I said, let me ask you this. And I started talking to her, and I said, this is what a free state society believes. And this is what the people want: less government interactions, more freedom to do what they need, expand the free market, et cetera, et cetera. And she's like, they want to get rid of taxes. She's like, well, what about the teachers? And what about the people who paid from those taxes, like firefighters and so forth? And I told her, I was like, this is where I'm going to encourage you to do your research, because there are a lot of different options out there. But as a teacher, it is my job to make you look this stuff up and think for yourself. And that's what I told my kids in the classroom. I know that that's a no-no, but we have to have these children think for themselves. We have to teach them to think for themselves. So she and I have started this journey. We're looking things up together, and I'm teaching her about this. But we do need to get the government out of our lives. We don't need the government in our lives, and we have gone far too long believing that they're there for us, they're protecting us, and they're going to take care of us. They're not going to. It is time to stand up for ourselves.
Amanda, you mean the government is not here to direct our lives and to help us, guide us?
No, and the thing is that, like with the Patriot Act, that was not there to protect us. We were willing to give up some of our freedom, our personal freedoms, for what they wanted to say was safety. It's not safety, it was intrusion, which I guess could lead us into this next article that you found about a doctor's office in Michigan. Tell us about it.
Yeah, this was posted, where did I find this? Oh, it's Daily Paul. See, this is the beauty of listening to our show. I'm going to brag about us for just a second, Amanda. The beauty of listening to our show is you guys don't have to do this work. You folks out there don't have to do it. We'll just do the work, because I'm like one of these geeks who reads stories all the time, so I'll find something. Well, I found this one on Daily Paul, and it's just kind of disturbing. Someone actually took a picture. They went into a doctor's office in Michigan, and the poster that they took a picture of said, "New Michigan medical records access laws have been put in place. This will require a nurse to have a short 5-minute private conversation with your child. We will explain the purpose and the process at the time of the visit." And when you start looking into it, you find out that what they'll do with your child is they will advise them on pregnancy, on abortion, on birth control, on venereal diseases, etc., without you being present, is what it boils down to. And now this is happening in Michigan. I don't know what the other state laws are, and I don't know if we're going to see this, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to see this in a federal law at some point. But when I saw this story, I was like, this is really bizarre that the people who obviously supported this legislation are so militant that they think somehow this is acceptable. This is okay to talk to your child without you being present. To me, this is just, I mean, I'm big on parental rights. If you're responsible for a child, then no one has a right to interfere with that. That's why I don't like these laws that restrict homeschooling. I don't like the laws that restrict vaccinations, etc. If a parent's going to raise their child, then they have to make the choices that they think are best for their child, and no one else has a right to interfere with them. That's all I was going to say. What say you, Amanda?
I agree with you. I am not on the fence about this. When I was reading comments from somebody else who posted this, they said, oh, look at the age. They're saying from 12 to 17. To them, that equated to having the discussion about sexuality, that was about venereal disease. That's what's going on with your body, puberty, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, I don't see the problem with that because some kids won't talk about that in front of their parents. If they're sexually active at the age of 12 to 17 and they don't want their parents to know, they're not going to talk about it to the doctor in front of their parents. But the thing about it is that somebody else stated, oh, I don't see anything wrong with that. It will get the child to open up more. I said, no, take a look at it from the government standpoint. I said, when the Patriot Act was enacted, we were like, oh, that's okay because they're protecting us. And little by little, they eroded our personal securities, our personal safeties, our personal independence, our individuality, and they're going to do the same thing with this. They're going to say, oh, no big deal, just a small conversation with our children, just a small conversation about things that we wouldn't talk about with them because the kids would feel uncomfortable. Parents, if your children feel uncomfortable talking to you about this stuff, it's nobody's fault but yours. Your children should feel comfortable enough coming to you to talk about subjects like sexuality and venereal diseases and puberty. Don't leave it to the government schools. Don't leave it to somebody else's parents to teach your children. This is a part of life. And if you're going to get your child to go into the world and you're going to get your child to be educated about their own bodies to protect them in the future, it is nobody's job but yours. So if your children don't feel comfortable talking to the doctor in front of you about sex and about disease and about everything that comes along with that, then it is nobody's fault but the parents, which, if they did their job, it would eliminate this 5-minute talk. So if people are doing their jobs correctly as parents, there would not be a need for this law. There just wasn't this new rule.
Mandy, I go back to, though, we've got to respect that people individually are going to raise their child the best way they see fit. And so some parents may want to do it, and at that age they may want to wait. I don't know. The problem I get into is trying to make decisions for other people. And my thing is, it's just, when it comes to me and my child, and I'll make that decision. But when it comes to other people's children, it's really none of my business. I have no right to say, and I sure as hell don't have a right to petition the government to force parents to discuss things with their child. They may be uncomfortable discussing with them at that time. And I think kids, they definitely develop differently, and I think a parent is probably the one most qualified to determine when a child is ready to talk about sexuality and disease and et cetera. So I just go back to, we've got to trust the parent to do it and to know their own child, and also go back to, I don't have a right to interfere with them. And that's just where I come down on it. I don't feel like I have a right or anyone else has a right to interfere with a parent and their child.
And I agree with you. At the same time, we know that there are people wandering around who are not raising their children appropriately. I mean, we've got children in middle school who are pregnant. Had the child been educated ahead of time and not been willing to be curious in that way, if they knew the repercussions, then this would not be happening. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I don't care when you think is appropriate for the children to know. The children need to know. And if you wait till too late, then you're still running into the same problems. If my child wants to be sexually active at the age of 13 or 14, they're going to find a way to do it. Now, I don't have children right now, but they will find a way to do it, and I'd rather know what they're doing and have them be educated to prevent future issues than to lie to me and say, oh, I don't know anything about that and wouldn't do that. Because I'm not – I know students.
Well, Amanda, the beauty of a free society is, for you and your child, you just articulated why you think you should raise your child that way. Then do that, and that's what's beautiful about a free society. Now, I may have a different opinion, but that's okay. I'm going to raise my child the way I want to raise my child, or the way I think that's best. And I think too, we've got to come to grips with, we always don't know what's best. Like, my opinion on XYZ isn't gospel. I have to respect that other people have other opinions. And as long as they're not harming me, then I don't really care. I mean, if somebody wants to never discuss sex with their children, that's their call. It's not. It's none of my concern.
Sure, I completely agree with that. I have no disagreement with that. I just know when it comes to me personally, I will start teaching my children as young as they can handle it to prevent things like teenage pregnancy. I don't want to say that teenage pregnancy is a black mark on America. It's not a black mark, but it is not fair to the children who are born from those teenage pregnancies who don't have the adequate family or parental maturity to be able to raise a child appropriately. You end up with the same situation in future generations. And to me, that's not okay. So if I'm in a classroom and I'm required to teach that, permission to do so, that's one thing, because I know I will come up against classes where I will have to teach that as part of the curriculum, and that is okay. But otherwise, I'm going to worry about mine and let people worry about theirs, just like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's definitely the best way to do it. I know for me, and this may be different for you, and I think it is different for females, like moms. I think it's easier for moms to talk with their daughters about these things. Like me, I'm a dad, okay, and technically I'm a single dad. Me and my wife are divorced, and so I have a son and a daughter, and with my daughter, she's now 13, and for me, this is very personal because she's 13 and I'm not really that comfortable discussing these things with my daughter, and she already knows way too much. Like, she knows way more than what she should. And so this whole subject for me is very scary because I think as a dad, you've got to deal with the fact that your little girl's grown up, and I think it's really hard for dads. I know it is for me. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but
I would agree with you. And I will say, I think I learned a lot about this subject on my own through my own research. If I have questions, the Internet is a wide variety of sources to learn about this. But I'll tell you, I learned a lot from watching my mother struggle also. My mom was a single mom. She raised 3 of us on her own. I was the oldest of 3 kids. I also helped raise my brothers. And, I watched my mother struggle. And I made a lot of decisions in my life based on watching my mother struggles. So people can also be a living example. They don't have to just run their mouths and tell kids and give them lip service. They can serve as living examples. However, do I think that my mom and I had enough of? Do I think my mom and I had enough of those talks? I don't. I don't by any means. But because I saw her and what she struggled with and what she went through, I based my life off of some of the decisions that she made in some of her life events. And it worked out for me. But that's me, and what I believe and what's good for me is not good for everybody by any means. So, I guess I encourage the kids, be aware, do your research, look things up. If you want to know something, go to an adult that you trust to talk about it. Look it up on the Internet. Do your own research.
No,
think for
don't
yourself.
Look it up on the Internet, Mandy.
No, if they're looking up on medical sites, trusted medical sites, or
go to WebMD, kids.
Right. Go to WebMD. Find an adult that you trust that can lead you in the right direction. But please, don't go doing searches inappropriately. That's all. I'll leave that there.
Don't Google search anything about sex, because God knows what'll come up then. So just stick to WebMD.
That's a great point.
Someone you trust.
And let me tell you, if you're going to look up any websites on the Internet, whitehouse.gov. Remember, it's .gov, not .com. That's all I got to say for that.
I will not be looking up anything on whitehouse.gov.
No, well, I mean, I don't want to look it up on whitehouse.gov either, but look it up. If you're going to look up anything about the White House, do it at .gov, not at .com. That's all I'm going to say for that. We'll leave that right there.
Okay. And now I've got to go find out what whitehouse.com is. Hey,
go for it. Go for it. Not that I'm trying to encourage anybody or even promote that page, but don't make that mistake. It's .gov, not .com.
It's
now,
.gov.
On that note, we're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be back very shortly right after these messages. Oh, well, my computer decided to go back a page, so we will be back in just a second, but I need to make sure. Okay, now let's go to a commercial break. We will be back right after these messages.
Hi, I have a question for you. Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Do you want a company that provides good quality ingredients and does not use artificial sweeteners. Look no further. Genesis Pure has a complete lineup of health and wellness, sports performance, and superfruit juices like noni and mangosteen that are pure, wild harvested with no binders and fillers. The philosophy is simple: cleanse the body of toxins, balance the body's pH and hormones, and build the body nutritionally. Every race has a starting line, and yours is cleanse, balance, build. Sign up for at least a 25% discount and include auto ship of at least one product to start building up 20% back in points for free products. It's a win-win. Help fund our operation while you fund your body nutritionally. Start your journey at genesispure.com/freedomizerhealth. Again, that is genesispure.com/freedomizerhealth.
There are a lot of problems with Common Core. I don't even have time to go into most of them, but a step in the right direction would be to give local communities, teachers, parents control over their schools so they can design curriculums and standards to best meet the needs of their students and get the federal government out of education.
Hello everyone, Proof is here. I want to let you know about our latest promotion on our freedomizerradio.com website. Our chat client Bark, BARC.com, is hosting a micro Bitcoin giveaway while supplies last. All you have to do is go to freedomizerradio.com, join our chat room, create a screen name, and type to your friends. And some micro Bitcoins will fall from the sky. Not only that, the more people that are typing, there will be some random lotteries as well. So just for typing to your friends, you can earn some micro Bitcoins. So who knows how long this will last, but join us now, freedomizerradio.com.
Thank you for tuning in to Freedomizer Radio, where we have a 24/7 chat room where you can come and share what's going on in the world with people of like mind. Anything and everything against the New World Order. Dial 347-324-3704 to catch our live show. Beginning at 9 in the morning Pacific Standard Time, Monday through Friday till midnight, and 9 to 9 on Saturday and Sunday. Take us to the beach. Take us to the park. Take us on a walk with the dog. Only on Freedomizer Radio.
U.S. trade negotiators are pushing to complete the TPP this year. They're trying to keep it under the radar. The best way to stop the TPP is to drag it into the light of day. Right now, negotiators have appointed approximately 600 corporate lobbyists to serve as cleared advisors on the TPP, while refusing to release any of their negotiating proposals for public review. The corporate media is unlikely to inform the public about the TPP. We need to do it ourselves.
And we're back. John Moreland went to get a little refreshing beverage in between the show and the commercial break.
Yes,
here.
I did. And I was reading the Daily Paul feed while I was at it. Yeah,
What's
have you
going
heard
on
about you know Adam Kokesh is?
Adam Kokesh will be broadcasting on the Voluntary Virtues Network, which we will start doing syndication tomorrow, yes.
Correct. Okay. Well, there's a story out that the title of the story is Adam Responsible for Vegas Cop Murders, and there's a video. I didn't have a chance to watch it though. There's a YouTube video. I'm trying to find out. He's being accused by the SPLC, which for those of you who don't know, that's the jerks at the Southern Poverty Law Center. And do some internet research. You can find out who those weirdos are. But USA Today and the SPLC have come after Adam with a petty guilt by association assault. The issue of violence, however, is too important to let the conversation descend this way. That's just a piece of the article I can read. And then there's the video. So, anyways, I don't know. I'm going to check it out because I'm curious what's going on. Because, you know, he after he did the video in Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C., they came to his house and arrested him. You know that, right?
Yeah, for having a gun inside the boundaries of
right.
the city.
Right, yeah, and they got him, and they busted him on a YouTube video. It's not like they caught him in the act and then, said, okay. So they raided his house, and if you go on the internet and just punch in Adam Kokesh arrested, there's videos of it where he's talking about what happened and others are talking about what happened. But they came down on him pretty hard. He spent several months in prison and finally was able to get out. I mean, I was really worried about him because he really does push it. He's very passionate about what he believes, and I do respect him. But I was worried about him, especially when they sent him to prison. I didn't know if they were going to let him out, Political activism is not something you want to be engaged in the United States. You can do it up to the point where they tell you to sit down and shut up. And if you sit down and shut up, you're fine. If you go past that point and refuse to sit down and shut up, which is what civil disobedience is all about, then they're going to bring the hammer down on you. And they did with Adam, so.
They certainly are.
So that'll be interesting. I'll look.
They're certainly gunning for him. They've been gunning for him. It's like gunning for Ian up in Keene, New Hampshire. He's part of the Free State Project up there. There are certain people they are gunning for. Anything that they can get their hands on to get these people into trouble, they will. So, yeah, you're right. Political activism in the United States is very dangerous if you decide to do it outside the parameters of running for office and having somebody work for your campaign. Anything that works within the confinement of what is acceptable is okay. If you decide to go a little radical and do your own thing and make a point, you are asking for things to happen to you like Adam Kokesh. Absolutely. Dancing at the Jefferson Memorial will get you put in jail.
Oh, you remember that. I was about to bring that up. Well, also the Occupy Wall Street crowd, which was primarily a leftist crowd, I even agreed with them. I had people who were of the conservative persuasion saying, well, when the police tell you to go home, it's time to go home. So, well, no, don't we have a supposed constitutional right of assembly? But that doesn't matter to these people.
Well, I will tell you this. I went back in 2012. I went with a friend. We marched on Washington for Ron Paul. It was the Vets for Ron Paul march, and we went to the Thomas Jefferson Memorial, and we danced. And there was a security officer staring at us, but we danced anyway, and we didn't care. She went and she started bowing down to the statue and started worshiping the statue, and we did it just to push buttons. He didn't care. He didn't pay attention. I mean, I think that ever since those people got arrested for that, they are kind of not worrying about it or just not even going to fool with it because he looked at us and he didn't give us a second glance. So I just think it's ridiculous. You can't go down the street these days or walk down the street without taking the risk of getting into some kind of trouble just because we live in such a police state society.
Yeah, Jefferson would definitely be ashamed of the civilization that he helped bring about and what we've degenerated into.
Well, speaking of Jefferson and speaking of our founding fathers, Cole, in the room that you said, okay, Amanda, you're going to have to clarify this a little for me. This article I came across is from thefederalist.com. This is why the College Board is revising U.S. history. And I think as an educator, this disgusted me. I will tell you, first of all, my personal experiences. I can't tell you the number of history classes that I took all throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, college. And if you ask anybody today, what is the Emancipation Proclamation, they're going to simply say, oh, that's the document that Lincoln signed to free the slaves. Well, no, it's not. The Emancipation Proclamation was the document that he signed, but what people conveniently did not learn in the education system is that it didn't free all the slaves. Any state that did not sympathize with the Union during the Civil War, they lost their slaves. Their slaves were freed. If you were a state that sympathized with the North, you got to keep your slaves.
Well, Amanda, it even goes even further than that, though, because it actually had no legal force. It would be like China passing a law or making a declaration for the United States of America. The Confederacy was a different country, so it didn't have any effect. Now, it did, but you are correct in saying that there were two states who were allowed to keep their slaves under that declaration.
Right. And the other thing, though, that people don't realize is that Lincoln did not give a rip about the black people in America. He simply said in his memoirs, written by him in his own words, I don't care about the Negroes. I simply want to free them so when I run for re-election next term, they will be there to vote for me. So he sacrificed their lives. He sacrificed.
Are you saying that there was a
thousands
politician who was willing to do anything to get votes? I've never heard of this.
It's a hero. Everybody thinks he is. Trust me. You know, here's the thing. I told you I took a number of history classes throughout elementary, middle, and high school. I made a 100 in U.S. history in high school, okay, a perfect 100. I got Social Studies Student of the Month. I will never forget that. And then I took U.S. history again in college. When do you think I learned this information?
After college.
After college, 2 summers ago, in fact, at the age of 32, is when I learned this information from a liberty-minded
well, you know,
friend.
There's a lot of stuff in history, like, for example, you'll get into debates with people and they say, well, you know, Hoover was laissez-faire, and FDR came in with all these programs. And that's not true at all. Hoover was not laissez-faire. Hoover instituted a ton of government programs after the Great Depression had started, and they weren't very effective. And then they still weren't that effective after FDR instituted those and more. So, and you can go back to this historical record. You can look at all the different programs that they passed during the Hoover administration. But still, people still to this day say Hoover was laissez-faire. Hoover was an interventionist just like FDR was an interventionist. But people repeat it so long that that's what they believe. And Lincoln worship is so sickening in this country. If you say anything about Lincoln, then you obviously are some sort of neo-Confederate that hates everybody, you know. And so you can't even – it's difficult. I don't even bother getting into debates with people about Lincoln anymore because it's like no matter what I say to you, you've had the Lincoln worshipers ingrain all this crap into you that to the point where you're not even willing to consider that maybe you've been misinformed. And that's the biggest thing I find with people who love Lincoln. I call them Lincoln worshipers on purpose. I mean, you can go through and there are people who have built their entire careers on writing glowing things about Abraham Lincoln, and they get accepted into, you know, all the college professors get accepted into all the right circles, and they get published and they get tenure because they're all Lincoln worshipers. But, you know, they love Lincoln so much because Lincoln was really the one who who basically sealed the deal. The Constitution was already bad enough, but really he was the first one that was a nationalist, that was a true nationalist, and he was a statist, and they loved that guy. And everything Lincoln stood for was statism. But you know, like I said, it's not even worth getting into because then you get into all these historical debates, and it's not even worth having anymore, honestly.
Well, I will say this. I had somebody question my lack of sources concerning the Lincoln's memoirs. I posted an article in the chat room. It is from Mises.org, the Mises Review.
Tom
Very
DiLorenzo.
reliable source. Very reliable.
Is it Tom DiLorenzo?
Let me check on that. I just posted. Yeah, it is. Very good. Yes. Yes,
Tom
it is.
DiLorenzo's written 2 books on Lincoln. He wrote Lincoln Unmasked and The Real
Unmasked,
Lincoln.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I
and
posted
he goes
that
point
in the
by
chat room.
point. And he's a well-known historian, but he's not well published because I'm trying to think of what college he teaches at, but because he's not a Lincoln worshiper. But he goes through in those books point by point and shows every unconstitutional act that Lincoln did, and it doesn't even matter. They ignore Tom DiLorenzo like he never wrote these books.
Well, I will tell you this, that the dishonesty of the president and what they're not teaching us in school is leading back into the education article that I found. Why College Board is revising U.S. history. Now, this is sad because these are advanced placement high school classes, and anybody who knows what advanced placement classes are. These are the classes that kids can take in college that will prepare them, in high school, that will prepare them for the structure and for the type of classes that you can expect when you are in college. So these kids are going to get college credit if they pass the test with a certain score, et cetera, et cetera. However, here's the deal. It starts out with a former university professor who's teaching middle school students, and he's really upset. This teacher wheels in a cart of The Great Gatsby into a classroom, has students pull them off, and then he has them open to a particular section that he knows is likely to be an excerpt on the AP test. Okay, so far people are probably saying, what's wrong with this? I'm not understanding. Here's the problem. With the Common Core that everybody is complaining about these days, teachers have no recourse of action except to teach to the test. There's not enough time to teach every intricacy that these students need to survive. There's no longevity in learning so that these children retain the knowledge for the rest of their lives. They have to teach to the test. So this teacher, he passes out The Great Gatsby. He has the students read one excerpt from The Great Gatsby, and that's all she wrote for The Great Gatsby. These children are not reading this book, okay, because this teacher, he says that this region where these kids go to school, they're known for their exceptionally high test scores. The reason that they're known for their high test scores is that they don't teach the material. They teach excerpts of the material and teach to the test. So they might not know the whole story behind The Great Gatsby. They're going to know one section of The Great Gatsby. And this was making
now, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't this part of Bush's No Child Left Behind? That's really when they started teaching to test.
It is, but this is directly related to the Common Core that they're trying to push here. And the problem
now,
is...
haven't some states rejected the Common Core? I was reading, was it Oklahoma or somewhere? They've rejected. They're not going to use Common Core. And I might be wrong about the state, but I was reading this the other day online.
A number of teachers across the nation have started pushing, and so have advocates for states to stop using the Common Core, and some states have been successful. I know that Georgia is trying to right now. They want to push education back to a local level. The people in the state, the nationals, they don't know anything about my students, and the school districts that I work for are so drastically different alone. I don't understand how there can be a cookie-cutter, one-size-fits-all model. It's just not possible. And the problem with this article is that, listen to this, it says, co-author Jane Robbins, who published a critique at Breitbart, said this: imagine having your teenager emerge from a U.S. history course with only a vague recognition of the name George Washington. Suppose the course mentioned the father of our country with reference to only one speech, no discussion of his military leadership and triumphs, his personal sacrifice to accept the call to become the first president, or his wise and steady leadership during the tumultuous first years of our nation. You're going to get children who are taking U.S. history classes that don't teach you about Ben Franklin. They do not teach you about James Madison. They only refer to the Declaration of Independence in one clause of one sentence. Tell me, what are these children learning in the U.S.?
I'd be okay with skipping Madison.
Well, maybe so, but here's the other problem.
I know what your point is, so I'm kidding.
In this new structure for AP U.S. history, they are only focusing on the negative things that our country has done. They're not focusing on anything that makes America. James, like you said, maybe James Madison we can skip, but Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, they're totally leaving them out.
Well, the only reason I say Madison is because of the Constitution. It was a jab, because he was the father of the Constitution, which I'm not a big fan of. But truly, Amanda, and I go even further than you do. And I understand. I've got a lot of people who say yes, we just need to get the federal government out of it, and we need to go back to the local level. And I understand that, and I don't disagree that we'd probably be far better off. But I'd like to dismantle the public schools. You know me. I mean, the whole thing is they're not funded through voluntary means. They involuntarily expropriate wealth from the community and force them to pay for a system they may or may not want to support. And so I go farther. But I do agree with you. If at least it went to local level, it would be better than what it is now.
Well, let's go back to what I was saying in this article for a minute. I don't know how I would feel if I'm supposed to be teaching a comprehensive history about our country and teaching our students about what makes our country wonderful or what made our country wonderful, and leaving out all this important information about who we are. I mean, essentially when I read this, all I'm seeing is that there are people in control of the curriculum that we're teaching that are going to teach our students how to hate our country, how to hate America. I don't hate my country. I don't like our leadership by any means. I don't hate our country. We have a lot of good things that happened in our country. But this new structure that is supposed to be college-bound material is teaching our students how to hate America. It's not teaching us the
aren't
truth.
we talking about I'm sorry. Just one thing I wanted to point out is I think sometimes, for me, I look at symptoms and causes. And I think this is just symptomatic of a greater cause. And the cause is you've got a public school where you force everybody into it. And then let's say I totally agree with you, and they're going to teach these kids like, hey, America sucks, okay? But wouldn't it be better if you had a decentralized system of private schools where if your kid was being taught that garbage, you could say, you know what, I'm not supporting that. I'm going to take my kid and my money out of this school and take it somewhere else where they're not going to teach my kid that garbage. I mean, doesn't that seem like that would be more of an effective?
No, not every child is taking this course. I don't disagree with you, but we've had this conversation numerous amounts of time. Let's just say that I eventually want to start my own school with a curriculum that I support that teaches the actual history of our country, and we'll go with that. But AP classes are not for every student. Not every student will be enrolled in these classes. And Common Core itself is a mysterious entity because technically Common Core is just a set of standards. And I was even told by the superintendent of schools for the entire state of Georgia, if your students are hitting the Common Core for their level, for their grade level, and they can handle it, move them past the Common Core, move them above, take them further, teach them, keep going. But then you have the testing that's involved with the Common Core. The testing is essentially the problem with the Common Core. If it was just a bunch of standards that we had to meet, everything needs a standard. Sorry, but you need something to measure to whether or not your child is picking things up. And if they're meeting that standard early and you have time, push them ahead, push them past the standard and let them learn and continue to teach. It is the testing that's getting in the way. And here we have another example of where testing is getting in the way. And people think that all this questionable material that goes along with the Common Core is because of Common Core. It's not. It's because local school districts have chosen a lot of the materials that kids are learning or reading in school. But once again, the parents are blaming the Common Core. So the Common Core itself is a mysterious entity. It's got a lot of intricacies here and there that make it a subject that makes it very hard to talk about because people have a lot of misconceptions about it. I'm not certainly saying that I support the Common Core. I think we need something to measure our children where they are, where they should be. But ultimately, I believe what you say, that we should have school options and choices, and I eventually want to start my own school, period.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And then, in a market system, people can pick and choose what they want, and they can decide on the standards they want, the testing they want, and they can review, where they think their children should be. And different institutions like your school could say, hey, listen, this is the kind of testing we do to show you, the parent, that the kids are actually retaining what we're teaching them, that this is actually sinking in. And so then instead of it being this gigantic problem which we're all trying to solve, it becomes a simple problem because each parent is responsible for their child and their child's education, and all they have to do is solve that problem. And so I do think that would be a better system. And I do think then we wouldn't get into all these heated debates about is Common Core good or is it bad. I mean, people do get up in arms, and I was at a Republican meeting several months ago, and man, people are outraged about Common Core. They were hot about it. And now I was the one guy who suggested, well, wait a minute, get rid of the socialist schools and this wouldn't be a problem. And then they got mad at me, but
now I do have somebody
no surprise
on the line.
there.
I have get mad at you. Yeah, that's really no surprise.
Yeah, surprise
I love
there.
John Moreland, but John Moreland's very opinionated and has very solid ideas in his head. Yes. We do have a caller on the line. I'm going to bring in a regular who wants to say a few things. Larry is going to come on the line with us.
Hi, Amanda. Hello, John.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
Hey, Larry.
Oh, pretty good, youngster. If I got any better, I don't know what I'd do with myself.
So,
Lincoln
Larry,
was a jerk. He was a tyrant wannabe. Totally did away with the Constitution. Did away with the writ of habeas corpus. If you were a congressman and objected, he threw you in jail. By the way, wasn't
sounds like
James
a nice
Madison
guy.
Yeah, lovely guy. Wasn't James Madison third?
If that's true, I did not know that. But I probably would like him better as a third baseman than father of the Constitution.
Why? The Constitution's better than anything else. Show me some other government that beats out the Constitution.
How about no government? How about no government?
Partner. Yeah, well, if you live in an idealistic world where you don't have evil people, fine, John. But let's be real.
Yeah, in an idealistic world, the Constitution will work. But look, they've proven you've got these power-mad people up there, and even a Constitution, a piece of paper, is not going to restrain these maniacs.
Yeah, that's because people are apathetic, and I'm not going to argue about it. But, you got to be realistic. And your ideas are nice on paper, but they suck in real life, okay? Sorry. At least with the Constitution, we've slowed them down. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, Lincoln was.
We're certainly going to have to see. We're certainly going to have to see more systems in action to be able to see whether or not they actually work. So we can't say they will or will not until we actually do see them in action.
We got rid of that douchebag Dewhurst in Texas. Dan Patrick kicked his butt.
Well, and we also got rid of Eric Cantor. We also got rid of Eric Cantor yesterday.
I heard, and I'm like, yes. I don't know.
But we didn't get rid of Lindsey Graham.
No, we didn't get rid of Lindsey.
And it doesn't matter how many of these jerks we get rid of. It's not going to change. It never changes. Never.
Well,
the policy stays the same.
John,
it sounds like South Carolina. It sounds like South Carolina had the same problem with their primaries yesterday that Georgia had just a few weeks ago, because the Georgia options that are left now are Jack Kingston, who's an establishment crony, and David Perdue, who is first cousin to Sonny Perdue, who used to be the governor of the state of Georgia. So we're having the same issues. Again, it doesn't matter what they stand for. The issue is, just as long as we got that R in front of their name and they win, we win, everything's grand. It's no change.
Who do we elect? Evil or Dr. Evil? Yeah, his son or his cousin? Yeah, they're both evil. But see, here in Texas, we get too fed up with things, and we just don't re-sign that stupid treaty that makes us part of the country. And after that, it's over.
Oh, that'll never happen.
Well, see, here's the thing. We don't have to ask the government's permission to secede. All we have to do is not sign that stinking treaty.
Now, Larry, who's living in a dream world? Go ahead and try that and see what the feds do.
What are they going to do?
Invade. That's what they do. Use violence and coercion. That's what they do.
Yeah. Okay. Invade. Good luck. You have no idea what Texas is like, son. You need to come
I've been to Texas.
Yeah.
I've been to Texas.
How long?
I was there for a week.
How long?
I enjoyed it.
Gee.
I enjoyed visiting.
Okay.
I was actually in San Antonio in that area, and I got to talk to folks out there.
That's
nice folks.
All I have to say is remember the Alamo. Remember the Alamo. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, they didn't surrender. Yeah, and remember Gilead, and let's see. We had some other places where we really just decided to take a stand, and Santa Ana wound up running back to Mexico dressed as a peasant. Oh, yeah. And he outnumbered us even. Gee. But anyway.
Well, hey, if Texas does that, believe me, I'll be all for it. I won't be against it if Texas decides one day we're out of here. I might even move to Texas at that point.
Well, I'll tell you what, it does scare the federal government because there are people in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Arizona, New Mexico, and other parts unmentioned that will be willing to help us out. We have a lot of friends, okay? And it ain't going to be just the federal government against Texas. But be that as it may, I'd rather it not be that way. I'd rather see the federal government be honest good little schoolboys, but we ain't going to have that happen. Just like teaching abstinence to a bunch of ghetto kids that want to go and steal hubcaps off the car, including the wheels. aren't really going to think about that either.
Or like being foolish enough to give a government the unlimited power to tax. That
well,
too.
That's
a bad idea.
People didn't give the government that power. The government took that power. You need to go back and read. The Constitution does not give them unlimited power. Okay.
It doesn't limit it. Where does it? Where you quote from me? Show me in the Constitution where it limits that power. It gives the Congress the right to lay and collect taxes. That's what it says. It doesn't say to a maximum.
Okay, Motor Mouth, hold on a second. Hold on. Slow down. You asked me questions, then steamroll the conversation. You're going to let me have an answering to that? Because I have an answer.
I'm giving you guys, I'm giving you guys about 2 more
minutes
minutes because we have a commercial break coming up. So please, you've got your last comment.
The reason why they took away our ability to choose senators the way we had, which, by the way, was never properly ratified, was because a Senate had to approve those taxes. If that senator did something his people didn't like, they could recall him. Okay? Henceforth, Davy Crockett got recalled because he tried to do some socialist crap, giving a widow some money. Okay? And they didn't go for it. Well, anyway, with the 17th Amendment, it kind of did away with a lot of things. That power of taxation was controlled by we, the people, calling back our senator if he did something that really ticked us off. But the whole Constitution was not designed around, people electing a senator. No, not without any kind of ramifications. We had representatives in our state that would appoint a senator based upon his ability to lead in Congress for we, the people. And the minute he didn't do his job, he was out of a job. But anyway, all that aside.
Okay, I'm still not hearing anywhere where the Constitution limited their authority to lay and collect taxes, because Article 1, Section 8...
I just explained it to you.
But that doesn't explain in the document where it shows that they're limited.
I just showed you. Are you dense?
No, that does not. To me, that does not answer the question.
Dude, well, then,
I tell you what, Amanda, what do you
think?
Do you think that answers the question?
I know 8-year-olds, homeschoolers that get it better than you, John. There's a problem here, and it's not with the Constitution. Okay? If an 8-year-old understands it, I don't know what to tell you. I'm done.
Larry, now you can degenerate into personal
attack.
attack.
I'm not degenerating anything. Well,
you can have an honest debate. You don't want to have an honest debate about it.
No, I'm not going to argue over this garbage because I already answered, and you don't get something that little kids get. I'm not going to do this. Anyway, Amanda, look, I don't want to argue on your show or nothing. I'm done, okay? But by the way,
guys, thank you very much for calling in.
If you don't want your kids to get pregnant, teach them abstinence. It works, believe it or not. If you raise them in the right environment, I know plenty of kids that have decided to wait until they're married. And you know what? They don't have to worry about pregnancy because they ain't having sex. And a 13 or a 14-year-old has no business thinking about it. That means something went wrong in the family. If you have children that are 13 or 14 thinking about sex, you failed as a parent. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. Because it's up to you to teach your children right. Anyway, God bless you, kids. Have fun, youngsters.
Take care, Larry. And
Bye,
we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to go to a commercial.
No. Wait a minute, Amanda.
We'll be back.
Hold on a second.
After. Yes.
Hold on a second. I just want to say one thing. If someone's going to call in to the show, which I love, please let's have an open, honest discussion. And if I have an honest disagreement with you, don't personally attack me. Just simply state your case. State your case, and if we disagree, then we disagree. And as far as Larry goes, he didn't, in my opinion, he did not answer the question, and which I think is completely reasonable. And Larry, I hope you're listening. I'm saying this with the utmost respect, even though I feel as if I've been disrespected. But if you call in and you want to talk about something, let's talk about it. But don't attack people and say they're not smart or they're not as smart as an 8th grader because they disagree with you. So, Larry, again, I'll ask you, if you want to call back in and show me in the Constitution where it limits the federal government's authority to tax, we can talk about that.
Well, and John, I have to say, you guys, you bump heads a lot. I know it's very questionable. It's very risky bringing him on the show to talk back and forth with you. I think that both of you are a wealth of knowledge, but I have to agree with you tonight. I have to agree with you with the sheer fact that usually in a debate or a disagreement, which I don't think you're disagreeing, but in a debate, it is up to that person to convince the other person that their side is right by providing the backup information. And if the other person doesn't understand, you have to still keep reiterating your point with facts so the other person gets your point. That is the point. I think, like you said, when you resort to knocking the other person or saying something that insults them, then you lose the argument. And it is true. I'm sorry. I agree with you tonight, John. I think that you were stating your point well. It got a little loud, but in a debate, if you
which is great.
If you make a comment concerning the other person's level of intelligence, the argument is lost at that point. It's true. So, John, tonight I agree with you, and I appreciate a good debate also, but one that doesn't try to scream over each other. So, you guys are just both very passionate about what you believe and the knowledge that you have, which honestly we need more people like that in our country. So kudos to the both of you for being educated. I appreciate that. And it is now time to take a break. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
You know the Constitution like the back of your hand. You've read books, listened to podcasts, attended lectures, surfed websites, and watched videos. You've made liberty your life's goal, but something seems to be missing. Stickers from LibertyStickers.com. Exercise your freedom of speech with the world's most dangerous bumper stickers. That's LibertyStickers.com. But wait, there's more. You can buy Liberty Stickers wholesale. Get them for 99 cents each when you put 100 or more in your shopping cart in any combination. Sell them or give them away. They're great for gun shows, flea markets, fairs, outreach, and more. Earn extra money, promote freedom, and spread the word. Need custom stickers, labels, or decals for your organization or business? Liberty Stickers makes them. Go to LibertyStickers.com to order or call 877-873-9626. LibertyStickers.com, the world's most dangerous stickers.
Are you dedicated to ending the New World Order? Well, it's time to make way for spontaneous order. Hi, I'm Eric Bell, host of Freedomizer Radio's new hit show, For Whom the Bell Tolls, where you will hear current events from a voluntary's perspective, philosophical libertarianism, and a roadmap to a free and stateless society. Tune in every Tuesday at 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific and 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you for listening to Freedomizer Radio. This is Jen Coffey, your host of the Knives, Lipstick, and Liberty Show. Join the conversation every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Jen Coffey, thanking you for listening to FreedomizerRadio.com.
Oh, you want to heal the world? Oh, you can't do that. You got to elect the right people. No, change your thinking. Change the way you feel. Change the way you do things. Do everything for peace. Like John Lennon said, walk for peace. You take a shower for peace. Do whatever you do for peace. Every time you do that, you set a ripple effect out. Because we live in a vibrational world, and your brain is the instrument. To learn how to direct and control your mind, you guys are superheroes. They don't want you to know that, but you are. You guys are the most powerful people in the world.
We see the power in you to change your thinking. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, only on Freedomizer Radio.
Globe Sound and Consciousness Institute presents the Globe Sound Healing Conference, with the full spectrum of the most well-known and respected pioneers, researchers, therapists, doctors, and musicians in the field. The conference will focus on acoustic instruments, sound and medicine, new sound technologies, sacred geometry, and raising consciousness with sound. The conference is being held September 26th to the 29th in the San Francisco Bay Area. Call 415-777-2486 or go to globesoundhealingconference.com. That's globesoundhealingconference.com.
And we're back. We are back from our commercial break. John, are you still with us? Okay,
sorry, I muted myself. No, I'm here. I had to take a potty break. I mean, come on.
Well, I think that is okay. You're allowed to. I'll give you permission this time.
Thank you. Do I get a hall pass?
You do. I'll sign it too. I'll even sign it, so you don't get a detention. But we were
for being tardy.
For being tardy. We were talking about Dave Bratt earlier in the show. This is the man who won the primary in the state of Virginia, and I wanted to talk a little bit about who he is. From Reason.com, I found an article, and the title says, "Who is Dave Bratt? Take a look at the Ayn Rand-loving, immigration reform-hating, Cato Institute referencing man who beat Eric Cantor." So that right there tells us that he's a very intelligent man. And all I have to say is, Virginia, you must have wanted a big change, because this man is unlike anybody who has been elected thus far in this country.
Well, what little I know about him, he seems pretty free market by some of his statements. So, that's a nice change.
That's also what I understand, yes. So let's take a look into the life of this man a little bit. It says, who is Dave Bratt? That's the question that every news outlet seems to be asking right now. He works at the Randolph-Macon College. He's an economics professor. He was little known nationally until he unexpectedly beat Republican Representative Eric Cantor last night in the Virginia primaries, the first time a sitting House Majority Leader has lost his own party's vote since the position was created in 1899. This man is making waves. He's going to face off against Democrat Jack Trammell, who is also a professor at Randolph-Macon, in November to become the new representative for Virginia's 7th Congressional District. Not a lot of people know about this man. He's published papers titled Adam Smith's God and the End of Economics, an analysis of the moral foundations in Ayn Rand, God and Advanced Mammon, Can Theological Types Handle Usury and Capitalism, and the Moral Foundations of Capitalism from the Great Generation to Financial Crisis. He's for free markets, but he's not so keen on other aspects of a free society. So here's the basics of this man. He lives in Henrico County, Virginia. He has a wife, 2 kids, ages 15 and 11. He was born in 1964. He's going to turn 50 in July. He works at a small liberal arts college, teaches economics and ethics, and chaired the Economics and Business Department for the past 6 years. He studied economics at American University and divinity at the Princeton Theological Seminary. He's being painted as the Tea Party candidate, but he didn't have any major Tea Party support, and he failed to secure endorsements from big groups such as Freedom Works or the Tea Party Patriots. He raised only just over $200,000 for his campaign, according to the New York Times. So he brought down...
Yeah. And his campaign manager is 23 years old. Did you hear that?
No, and this says
his campaign manager is 23.
This says to
That's
me
insane.
that Virginia's stepping up and saying we need a change. And the Tea Party is irritating me because they're taking credit for this, and they didn't want anything to do with him. But his views, he's pro-market, he's pro-privacy, he's deeply religious, which is neither here nor there. He's anti-immigration, he's Randian. He teaches free market economics and the ideas of Ayn Rand, and he's pro-war is peace.
Well,
Peace is
I read a quote by
strong
him,
national defense.
And it leads me to think, because you've got, if you really get into economics, there are 2 different types of quote-unquote free market economists. There are the classicals, and then there are the Austrians. The Austrians are the much more extreme. The Austrians are the ones I follow. They're the much more radical for capitalism. But he talked about, and a quote I was reading from him, about all the distortions in the market. And that's a very, very familiar theme if you're an Austrian. That the Austrians are always talking about distortions in the market created by government intervention. So my hope is this guy's an Austrian economist. And I don't know if you know this, and you probably do, but Ron Paul was a big fan of the Austrian School of Economics.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Okay, you did know that. Okay. But the classicals are a little bit different. The classicals aren't quite as hardcore than the Austrians. So.
Well, I do know that
we'll see.
from what I understand, he has a very clear understanding of economics. So this guy, I'm kind of looking at this like, wow, where did this guy come from? He came out of nowhere. And here's some miscellaneous information about him, that he is so unknown that his Wikipedia entry was only 2 sentences before Tuesday night. Cantor's campaign spent over $168,000 just at steakhouses, which appears to be more than Brat spent on his entire campaign. He said from his own campaign website that he fully supports an investigation into the Benghazi attacks. And from Politico, this is just funny. He earned a red chili pepper for hotness from students on RateMyProfessor.com, and they said he's total eye candy. So based on the fact that people are most willing to elect people who look hot or good, I think he wins in that category. So maybe he's got that going for him.
Hey, you know what? I just found a quote about him, or by him. I support a full audit of the Federal Reserve System. He's got to be an Austrian. He has to. He's not perfect. He said that strong defense is the way to combat or to work towards peace. That's the only thing I really have a problem with. Well, now see, I read that too, and that makes me curious. Is he now? He said that strength. He said basically peace through strength. You can take that a couple different ways. Is he a pro-peace candidate? Is he someone who's always going to fall on the side of peace, but if it's absolutely necessary, would use military force? So is he kind of talking like Rand Paul, but is more like a Ron Paul or Ronald Reagan, where he's, well, not that Ronald Reagan be considered pro-peace, but I think that quote is a little confusing. I'm not quite sure where he falls on that, but he does sound a little hawkish in that statement.
Yeah, so that's the only thing I think I'm really concerned about, or not even concerned, but curious about. But everything else is kind of just like everything else. He's kind of just like a breath of fresh air. But the fact that he is running against his own colleague, who's a Democrat, and he's a Republican, that's the strange thing. But this says to me that Virginia is ready for a change. This says to me that Virginia is going to set the pace for other candidates like this. And they're going to usher in a new generation of people who are going to be more like-minded with the liberty movement.
You know, it may be. It'd be interesting to see what happens with him. But I'd definitely like to know a little bit more about the guy. Virginia
is a major player in the game of politics, especially with votes, with electoral college and all that. People keep a close eye on the state of Virginia. So how he does in the election in November is going to be very interesting to see.
Well, you know, you were talking about Virginia maybe wanting a big change by electing this guy. You know, it'll be interesting to see if he actually does get through the election. But, you know, I was looking at, to try to bring this back to a kind of a different point, I was just driving down the road the other day, and I saw this guy in a clunker, and on the back of his car was Obama 2008. And it made me think, you know, it's not 2014, okay? This person voted for Obama back in 2008. Obviously, and he's still driving a clunker. Obviously, he's realized, he's made the connection, okay, Obama's been in office for 6 years. My life is obviously no better. I'm still driving this clunker. Maybe the same thing is going on in Virginia, where they're like, things aren't any better. We elected Terry McAuliffe, and we've had Obama for 6 years, and nothing's improved. Now, my fear is that they'll run the other direction, or the supposed other direction, and vote for Republicans, and that won't help us either. But
well, I can say this much, that I would be very curious to see what that person would say had you pulled them over and asked them, hey, who do you support now? I don't think that even in that situation, I don't think that some people, it would faze them. Oh man, that's my president. Yeah. I love my president. My president is wonderful and fantastic. Yeah, I don't think it matters. I was driving past a car the other day that had Obama 2008 and Obama 2012 on their bumper, and the only thing I could do was groan and almost keep myself from vomiting.
Yeah, you know, there are some people who are they kind of have this sycophantic obsession with people, you know, and I think we saw it with George W. Bush too. No matter what George W. Bush did, no matter how he shredded the so-called beloved Constitution, it didn't faze those people. He was their guy. And it's weird. We're seeing the same thing with Obama now. It's almost like they're obsessed with their personalities, no matter what they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I do want to change gears here because as both you and I know, social media plays a huge role in society now, whether it is getting news at a speed-breaking minute, whether it is getting information from your friends, whether it's keeping up with your family around the world. Social media has made such an impact that we can connect with people around the world in a matter of seconds. I mean, it's a huge deal. But social media also interrupts people's lives on a daily basis in the most obscure and strange ways. How would you feel, John? I mean, I know that you are getting along very well with Nina, and life is going very well for you and Nina. How would you feel if Nina says, oh, yeah, John, I'm glad you asked me to marry you. Thank you. And then she comes back and says, but I'm going to ask you to sign a social media prenup. Now, you, I know, said earlier, what in the world is a social media prenup? This is an agreement that bans your husband or wife-to-be from posting anything potentially embarrassing online without your prior consent. So you can't post unflattering pictures. Russell Brand posted a picture of Katy Perry in bed without makeup. That probably wouldn't have happened if they were on the same page socially. People are actually creating these now. So what if Nina came up to you and said, oh, yeah, John, I'm so glad I want to marry you. I love you to bits and pieces, but I need you to sign this prenup that says you won't post anything embarrassing about me on Facebook without my permission.
Yeah, I think that whole thing is kind of weird because if you have good communication with your significant other, then, I mean, this shouldn't be a problem, should it? Or am I not thinking about this the right way? Because, like, me as a guy, I'm like, okay, fine, hon, you don't want your pictures on there. I don't need to sign a prenup. I mean, just tell me you don't want it on there.
Well, I mean, this redefines marriage, and I'm not getting into the whole gay marriage thing. That's a totally different subject. This alone redefines marriage in the fact that a marriage, and maybe I'm old-fashioned, I don't know, but a marriage consists of honesty, respect, love, and communication with each other at all times. And if you're doing this, you obviously don't trust your partner. So how can you get married? I mean, I'm even one that if I am getting married, I'm not going to have my significant other sign a prenup to protect my assets. If you love a person, you are joining in matrimony. You are not, if you really love a person, if you even have to question whether or not to have them sign a prenup just to protect your belongings, you might want to rethink getting married because you don't love that person a whole lot, in my opinion.
No, I would tend to agree with you. I think prenups can sometimes be damaging because to me it almost seems like, okay, we're getting married, but now we're going to go ahead and set the stage for divorce. It's kind of like you're almost planning for divorce. Isn't that, I mean, do you think that's weird? I mean, I do.
I think it is strange because too many people these days go into the mentality of, oh, well, if it doesn't work out, we can always get divorced. That is such a selfish thought. We're going to get married. And what if there are children involved? How's that going to affect your kids? How is that going to set the pace for the rest of your life? It is not just a matter of if this doesn't work out, we can always get a divorce, because there is still a lot of pain involved. If you are not going to marry this person and say, this is it, we're going to make this work, you shouldn't get married. And maybe people disagree with me, and they're welcome to, but marriage is a big thing. It's a contract, but people forget that marriage takes work. It's not you just get married and bam, everything is hunky-dory. It takes work, and I have a feeling that a lot of people these days are too lazy to put in the work that it takes to make a marriage successful.
I tend to agree with you. I think the big problem that you run into, though, is you've got to have two people who are committed to what you just said. If you have one person who says, I'm staying married no matter what, and the other person says, well, I'm leaving, I mean, you can't tie them up and throw them in the basement. I mean, so you do run into that problem. But I tend to agree with you. I think if we had a world where people made a marriage commitment and that was that, would be a lot better off. And I don't even care about society. they've done study after study where the individuals who stay married are better off financially. They're typically happier. I mean, I knew a couple, this was several years ago, but they had kids, and they went through a long period where they didn't even sleep in the same room together. And this went on for about 2 or 3 years. They had kids in high school, etc. But they and I talked to this lady about it because she was just telling me about, kind of what she'd went through. And she said it was horrible. And they thought about getting divorced several times. But they stuck with it. And she said their oldest graduated high school, and it had been about 2 or 3 years. They hadn't even lived in the same room together. Like something clicked, and they reconnected, and things were better than they've ever been, and they were happier than they've ever been. And it worked for them. But they stuck with it. And she said, she just came from a generation where you just didn't get divorced. And so, but today's generation, 2 or 3 years not sleeping in the same room, not living in the same, people would get divorced, I mean, it would be toast. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think people need to, if you're going to get married and stay married, and both people have to know, hey, this is serious.
Well, I read another article too about a man who came forward, and he was apparently going through what they call the midlife crisis. He went to his wife and said, well, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't think I love you anymore. And she looked right at him and said, I'm not buying this. She said he had been through a series of heartbreaks. He lost his job. He didn't feel confident in himself anymore because of it. He was no longer the breadwinner. He was depressed. She's like, I'm not buying this. He's like, did you hear me? I said, I'm not in love with you anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. She's like, no, I'm not buying it. She's like, what can we do to support you and give you the space that you need to work things out? And he started getting upset. And she's like, I'm not buying it. What can we do to support you? He goes, I heard you. She's like, then what can we do to support you and give you the space that you need? And she said he left for a while. He wouldn't keep to the obligations that he made. He just stopped coming home for a while. But they didn't talk about divorce. They didn't talk about separating. She let him do his thing. She said it was painful. She said she grit her teeth and she clenched her fists many nights. She cried when she wasn't in front of her children, but she held her ground and gave him the space he needed. And sure enough, a few months later, he just came home and started back into the role that he had left and started mowing the lawn again, and he started becoming a part of the family. The whole point was not that he was upset with the marriage. He was upset and depressed with himself, and he was putting that on the marriage, saying that the marriage was making him unhappy. So once he worked through his problems, once again, they were stronger than ever. And sometimes it takes stuff like that to make you realize just what you have. It was obviously a personal issue with him. He had to work through that personal issue. And she noticed it, and she said it was hard, but in the end it was worth it for them. And I also come from a family with 2 sets of divorced parents. They're both remarried. I don't want to say that divorce is not okay, it's not acceptable. Sometimes even if you try, it just doesn't work out. You didn't know. And that does happen. I don't want to discourage anybody who got divorced. I don't want to say they're bad or wrong for what they did. Sometimes it just doesn't work. But if it is an issue like you and I talked about, like the people who were living in separate bedrooms, like the people who the man's going through his crisis, don't just write it off, because there was something going on outside of the marriage that was affecting the marriage. But these prenups, if I love somebody enough, I'm going to give everything that I have, and I'm going to share it with them because I love them that much. That's all there is to it. No prenup.
Well, I grew up in a kind of a different household because my parents have now been married over 40 years. And that's their only marriage too.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
It'll be 41 years this July. I remember last July, we had a 40-year anniversary for them. So, so I grew up in a different household, but I did have friends who, their parents were divorced. I mean, and it's a pretty common thing. And I'm divorced too, so twice divorced actually, if we want to get real technical. But it's funny, and that's why I said something earlier about what do you do when one person says they want to stick with it and the other person walks out the door? You got to have 2 people who are ultimately committed to making this thing work. Because if you just have one person who says, I want to make it work, and the other person that says, I want to leave, well, you can't chain them up and throw them in the basement. So,
what would you do? What would you do? Would you, if your partner said, I want to make this work, and you're like, I don't want this. Would you try again?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if you get married, that's what you should do. I mean, you should. I mean, if it was me, yeah, you should always try to make it work. If there's any way you can make it work. Now, if the other person is a loon or is crazy or is abusive, of course, there's these situations that happen that people can't avoid. I think that, I guess, I don't know if I should say can't avoid, but it makes divorce understandable. You know, if you go home every day and your wife is swearing at you and throwing stuff at you and you divorce her, okay, that makes sense. Or if you go home and your husband's smacking around on you every day, well, and you leave him, okay, you know, I think that makes sense. But if a lot of times it's funny, even with couples when you're dating, when you sit down and think about it, you end up fighting over silly stuff. Like, it's funny what happens when two people spend a lot of time together and how they love each other to death. And then they end up fighting over the silliest little things. And then when you stop and think about it, you're like, why did we do that? What, you know? Like, really? So I think if people can make it work, they should try to make it work. You know, my brother, for example, he's been married for, I think he's been married 14 years now or 15 years, my older brother. So he's been married a long time. Out of us 4 kids, he's been married the longest. So
that's awesome. I didn't even know that you had an older brother.
older brother, younger brother, and younger sister.
Oh, that's funny. The things you learn about your co-host that you didn't know on a weekly basis.
Well, you know, I mean, how many do you have? You have siblings, don't you?
I do. I'm the oldest of 5.
Oh, I thought you were one of 3. You're the oldest of 5?
I'm the oldest of 5. I have 2 full biological siblings, my 2 brothers, Brian and Chris. They're married. Brian lives in Utah, soon to be Idaho. Chris lives in Illinois. I just saw him last weekend, and each of them have a child. And then I have a younger brother and a younger sister who are half brother and half sister. Matthew, who is 20, how old is he? How old did I turn this year? Okay, I turned 34, so he'll be 24 in 2 days. And my sister Sarah, who turned 21 in March.
Huh. Wow. See, something I learned tonight.
I love this. We should try to introduce each other to new facts about each other, like on a weekly basis.
Oh, there we go. So we'll learn a little bit more. Well, now that we've got 18 minutes left, what else are we going to talk about? Because I know we had a lot of other stories, and I know we're not going to get to them all. We never do. But is there any one of the what's left particularly that you wanted to talk about?
You know, there is. I wanted to talk about what I called a feel-good story. And reading the title, it might not seem a feel-good story, but you'll understand why I called it a feel-good story. And one reason I wanted to cover it is because this comes actually from a Waffle House in North Carolina, in Raleigh. And I know.
Oh, yeah, I saw this.
You moved to Charlotte, didn't you?
Yes, just very, very recently.
Right. So this happened in Raleigh. This lady, you know, in the news recently, we've been hearing a lot about big tips being left for workers at any kind of food establishment. We got people getting $10,000 here, $20,000 here. And apparently a Waffle House server, they call her a waitress, which I think that's not PC and it's derogatory. It's a server. Shayna Brown works the late shift at Waffle House, and she was serving coffee on the late shift. And late shift is probably one of the hardest shifts to work because you don't have that many customers. Waffle House might be different.
And the ones who come in are drunk and throwing up on you.
It's true. It is so true. Waffle House might be different because it is deliberately open 24 hours so people can come in. It might be different, but I know they have a lot of very slow shifts. And she's very friendly. And every once in a while, even the bar room crowd will throw her, $5 extra here and there. But at 3 a.m. on Mother's Day, somebody came into the restaurant, and they called her over and said, "I'm going to bless you tonight." The man paid his bill with a credit card and wrote $1,500 on the tip line. and fed for her to share $500 with a sad-looking woman at the table nearby. And then he told her, hey, you have a good spirit. Well, Waffle House said that they're not going to let her keep the money.
Well,
She said, I feel like they
too
stole
bad.
it from me. They did exactly what they teach us not to do. And there is a small part of me that understands why Waffle House did this. There are a lot of credit card scams going on right now where people can write a humongous tip, but the system can't process it, so they not only not end up giving the tip, but the restaurant has to clear the entire bill because they can't put the credit card through because of this. It's a scam that's going around. So I can understand part of this. Brown said she feels like that they stole from her, and they did exactly what they teach them not to do. This really happened. The author actually took the time to confirm the story with the customer and who left the tip, and he didn't want any public attention for what he did. It was just a good deed. So the writer also contacted a Waffle House spokesperson who said that large tips are refunded to patrons as a regular procedure. Generous tippers are asked to tip again by cash or check. Okay, but here's the cool thing, that this writer of this article, when they contacted the businessman who left it, he said, can I have her name and address, please, so that I can send her a check. So
that was nice of him.
The guy wanted to actually follow up for real with the tip, and he wanted to leave it in the proper means that Waffle House would let somebody leave a tip that large. So he's actually sending the check straight to the server, which that's why I call it a feel-good story. So because it was legit. And so kudos to that man. Thank you for making the life of somebody who works very hard for what she does and making it a little bit better, because I know that that's not an easy job. So that's why I called it a feel-good story. I'm just glad that there are still people out there who want to do well for other people.
Yeah, that's something you don't hear about very often. $1,000 tip is pretty doggone good.
It is, and there's lots of stuff that she can do with that money with her children. So I'm really glad that she was able to get that tip. But I know we had some other stuff to talk about, and we still have plenty of time. So what is in the mind of John Moreland that you wanted to discuss with our beautiful listening audience?
Well, I was just looking at your list. You've got that the 10 biggest celebrity hypocrites.
Yes.
I thought that would probably fill 13 minutes.
Well, whether or not it fills 13 minutes, we can talk about some of the people out there. And some of the people on this list I was so bummed about. Listen to this. John Bon Jovi is number 10. Or is he number 1? I don't know. They didn't number him that way. But here's the thing that very much irritates me. He's a member of Obama's Council for Community Solutions, which is a cabinet reserved for citizens who had dedicated their lives to careers in civic engagement and social innovation. Okay, but he has low-income families footing the tax bill when it comes to his wealth. He owns a huge mansion in New Jersey. I've seen it. It's huge. And he only pays $200 in taxes because he lists his property as a farm, which he can do because he owns bees. But he failed to mention this tactic when helping the homeless find housing. So they still might not be able to afford their houses while he gets to dodge a huge tax bill. And the middle and lower classes are paying for it.
All this, and all you have to do is write some really bad music. I mean, that's all this guy's ever done, and he's so exorbitantly wealthy from writing bad music. I mean, this amazes me. And I don't really mind that he's screwing the government by dodging taxes. I mean, they're stealing that money from him, so he might as well dodge them. But then don't turn around and be all pro-government and be like, oh, hey, I'm going to go, be part of Obama's community task force. Oh, what a loser. I'm not a fan of Bon Jovi, as you can tell.
I used to be. That just disappointed me. I knew, though, he was an Obama supporter. I knew that.
What was the song he did for Young Guns 2 soundtrack? Do you remember that? That was, out on all the radio at the time. What was the name of that song?
Blaze of Glory.
That's it. Blaze of Glory. I remember that one. God, it was bad times in music.
Bon Jovi was my first concert I ever went to at the age of 9. It was his New Jersey tour. My mom took me there for my birthday, so I used to be in love with Bon Jovi.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Disappointing for me. Thank you. It's very disappointing for me.
It was a difficult childhood. What went wrong? Something obviously went wrong if you were in love with Bon Jovi. I'm sorry. Something.
No, not in the 80s. Not in the 80s. No, not in the 80s. But listen to this. Number 2 on the list, this is another no shocker, Barbra Streisand, who's another staunch Obama supporter and liberal. When making an appearance, she loves to advocate environmentalism, but when making an appearance, she does such things that are very wasteful, like asking for 120 separate bath towels. Her lawn is so big at her house, she has to spend $22,000 a year just to water it. She has a collection of furs. She cares about gay rights as much as Larry Kramer cares about spending $1 billion decorating a colony of houses in Malibu. I mean, environmentalism, you're such a hypocrite. Barbra Streisand, you are a hypocrite.
Well, it's funny. Most of those environmentalists, quote unquote, drive around these giant gas guzzling SUVs while they're telling everyone else, "Oh, hey, go get a hybrid."
Well, listen to this. Leonardo DiCaprio, speaking of, you must be either you read this article or you're psychic. I can't figure it out. But Leonardo DiCaprio is also a green celebrity. He advocates against global warming, which is a crock anyway. He made the cover of Vogue's Green
Denier.
The Prius.
You're a denier, Amanda. You're a denier. That's what they're calling people now who don't agree with climate change. You're a climate change denier, like a Holocaust denier or something. I know.
No.
I'm in denial about a lot of things. But anyways, go ahead.
He flies around in a private jet. He went under fire for making a really poorly thought out comment about his plight to help the world, stating, "I will fly around the world doing good for the environment." They said that they think he'll do more if he just stays home.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, a private jet creates more of a carbon footprint after one flight than an SUV creates in 1 year. Okay, so
that is fantastic.
Number 4 is Jenna Jameson. Jenna Jameson is a very famous adult.
Hey, wasn't that the hot model? Wasn't she a model or something?
No, she was an adult movie star.
Oh, I thought she was a model, but okay. So, proceed.
She's a hypocrite, like everybody else so far on the list. She's a PETA sweetheart who discourages people from doing harm to animals. She loves fishing with her boyfriend and posing in fur and leather for photo shoots. And she's more than happy to eat the fish on the organization's do not eat list while posing nude on the cover of their ads.
Oh God, I just pulled up pictures of her on Google Images. Man, she is not attractive. There's some old pictures of her where she was obviously like 20. She was a pretty girl. Man, she's had some work done, and it did not go so well.
You're right.
Oh, that's bad.
She got lip implants, did she not?
Well, yeah, but she's done something to her face, too, because she does not look like she did when she was young. She got something done to her cheekbones or something. She looks like a man now. She's horrible looking. And she obviously got a boob job because that's not real. I'm just saying. That stuff's not real. But, yeah, this is bad. I've never understood this. She'll take a woman who's really pretty, right? And then she'll turn around and she'll get all this plastic surgery. And she is just gross looking. I've never understood, especially women, when it comes to their chest, why women think bigger is better. Every woman complains about their size if they're a small woman. Every woman wants to be big, and it's like, you can just be normal and it's okay. It's all right. But
well, here's the other thing.
I mean,
I'm a well-endowed lady, and I'm not nearly as big as I look in my pictures. A large chest makes a woman look much larger than she is. It is not all it's cracked up to be. I'm not having the back issues that some women have, but I certainly wish that they were smaller. I really do. It is not all it's cracked up to be, and it seems like everybody always wants what they don't have.
Yeah, and they'll pay all kinds of money to get them. Okay, so who's the next hypocrite?
The next hypocrite on our list is Harrison Ford. He's another big environmentalist. Yes, Indiana Jones is under fire for this. He made a PSA in recent years showing his chest getting waxed and comparing it to trees getting cut down or ripped up out of the forest. But, like Leonardo DiCaprio, he's another jet owner. He doesn't own just one, but he owns 7. And the movie star says, "Don't worry, I only fly one at a time." And it says, as for the concerns of the critics who ask if his use of airplanes is contrary to environmental preachings, he says, "I'll start walking everywhere when they start walking everywhere."
You know, it's funny about Harrison Ford. I think Harrison Ford is a really great actor. I really, and I think he's just had this knack for picking good scripts. Like, you know, there are some actors you'll see in like previews for a movie, you'll see the trailer and you'll be like, you know, I'm going to go see that just because they always seem to be in good movies. And he's one of those actors. But every time I've ever heard that guy interviewed, he sounds like the biggest jerk ever. Ever.
Oh, that's funny. Well, next on the list is Paris Hilton. I'll sum this up by saying in 2004 she started in a campaign called Vote or Die, and they did a background search and found out she wasn't even registered to vote and had never voted in an election. Nothing to say
That's
for
fantastic.
her. Next on the list is George Clooney. And
oh, God.
Let's see. Apparently he's completely against private citizens owning guns. But he starred in movies like Syriana, where he was toting huge guns. He starred in Michael Clayton, where he plays a man who's forced to help advance a company that's poisoning people. And he quite enjoys his gig work for Nespresso, despite parent company Nestle having convinced African women to switch their baby formula and resulting in the deaths of thousands of children after their formula was mixed with Africa's dirty water.
You know, the thing about George Clooney is he's opposite of Harrison Ford in that he is a terrible actor, and he does not have a knack for picking good scripts. I mean, this guy, George Clooney has been in a handful of movies, and I swear, because of the guy's political persuasions, that's what's gotten him work in Hollywood, because he sucks. He sucks. When a movie comes out and George Clooney's in it, I don't go see it because George Clooney's in it. And it's not because I politically disagree with the guy. It's because his acting sucks. I remember being a teenager, all right, and as a teenage boy, I loved Batman. All right, let me admit this. As an adult male, I still love Batman, okay? But I remember going to the theater to see the new Batman, and it was starring George Clooney. I didn't know much about George Clooney at that point. I was like 16 years old when this movie came out. And I remember the first scene, but I was a big critic even at that time. I loved film. I was really into like reading all these magazines about directors and producers and what they were going to, what projects were next. I was big, cinema geek. So I remember going to the theater and seeing I think it was Batman Forever. I can't remember. He was in one of the really bad Batman films in the 90s. And I remember the first scene, he crashes through the window and he stands up and he says, "Hello, Freeze, I'm Batman." And I thought, oh, my God, I'm going to leave the theater. I'm going to walk out right now. This guy sucks so bad. I'm a better actor than he is. Put me up there. Anyways, I hate George Clooney. Okay, next. We got to hurry because now we got 3 minutes.
Yeah, I can tell we hate George Clooney. I will cover this very, very quickly. Madonna, also green, supposedly left a carbon footprint of 1,635 tons of pollution after her tour. She also scolded her daughter for smoking while she continues to smoke cigarettes in her music videos without a thought. She said, "Those are just an accessory. There's a difference."
Okay, let me say this. That perverse woman, she is pollution. Her tour was pollution.
Okay,
I'm just saying. I'm sorry. You get that old and you're flashing your boobs and you're like, how old is that woman? I mean, come on.
Next is Michael Moore, who is against non-gun control, but one of his bodyguards was arrested for having an unregistered gun. And number 10 is Oprah Winfrey, and she says that everybody who hates Obama hates him because he's black.
Oh yeah, yep, good old Oprah.
Yes, and I will say that our show has come to an end. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please listen next week from 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time or 4 to 6 on Thursdays on the Voluntary Virtues Network. Up next is Proof Negative. For the next 3 hours, we are holistic enjoyment. Please stay tuned, and we will join you again next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.